The wind moved through the trees like whispers, carrying the dry rattle of dead leaves across the cemetery gates. St. Aurelia's always looked hungry at night, the iron bars like blackened teeth, the crooked headstones jutting out like broken bones. The air felt too still, as if the earth itself were holding its breath, waiting for us to step inside. That's where the dare led us. Caleb swore it would just be a laugh, sneaking in on Halloween night. But even before we crossed the fence, I could feel the weight of the place pressing against my skin. Jess joked to hide her nerves. Mia kept glancing over her shoulder. And me? I told myself I wasn't scared. But the truth is, the cemetery was already watching us. It started with a dare. My friends, Caleb, Jess, and Mia, thought it'd be hilarious to sneak into St. Aurelia's cemetery just before midnight. St. Aurelia's was one of those sprawling, Gothic places. Tall, wrought iron gates, leaning headstones, mausoleums with stone angels that looked as if they'd weep if you turned your back. Nobody went there after dark, not even the groundskeeper. But when you're 17, Halloween, and trying to look tougher than you feel, peer pressure works better than fear. So there we were, hopping the rusted fence, our flashlights throwing narrow cones of light over cracked stone and dead leaves. The air smelled damp, like rain-soaked earth, though it hadn't rained in days. I remember that smell. I remember how it clung to me. At first, it was just typical teenage bravado. Caleb made zombie noises, Jess pretended to trip over a grave, and Mia kept shushing us, afraid we'd get caught. I tried to laugh along, but something about the cemetery was wrong. The silence didn't feel natural. Even in the dead of night, you expect crickets, the rustle of branches, distant traffic. But here, there was nothing. Just our footsteps crunching gravel and the faint whistle of the wind. Then, we saw the lights. Not flashlight beams, not lanterns, but a soft, golden glow flickering between the tombstones, like candlelight. "Someone else is here," Jess whispered. We crouched behind a row of crooked markers and peeked out. At first, I thought it was a trick of my eyes. A cluster of figures moved slowly across the cemetery path, holding candles in tall silver holders. They were dressed, strangely. Gowns that shimmered like cobwebs, coats with tails and lace cuffs, masks of ivory and feathers. Their movements were graceful, gliding instead of walking, as if their feet barely touched the ground. A masquerade ball. Right there among the graves. A violin began to play, soft at first, then swelling into a mournful waltz that echoed through the tombstones. More figures appeared, couples swirling together, masks gleaming under the moonlight. The air was suddenly heavy with perfume, sweet, cloying, like wilted roses and something metallic underneath. "Holy crap," Caleb breathed. "This is insane." "Who would even—" Jess began, but her voice trailed off. Because we all saw the same thing. One of the dancers turned her masked face toward us, and where her eyes should have been, there were only hollow black sockets. I wanted to run. I should have run. But the music pulled at me, wrapping around my chest like invisible strings. The figures moved with such eerie elegance that it was hard to look away. And when one of them beckoned, I felt my legs twitch forward before I caught myself. Mia grabbed my arm. Her hand was ice cold. "We need to leave," she hissed, but Caleb was already stepping out from behind the gravestone. "Are you crazy?" Jess whispered. "Look at them!" Caleb grinned, drunk on the spectacle. "It's like a real haunted ball. This is epic." Before any of us could stop him, one of the masked figures drifted toward him. A tall man in a black coat, face hidden behind a gilded mask shaped like a skull. He extended a pale hand. Caleb laughed nervously and, in typical Caleb fashion, took it. The figure pulled him gently, too gently, into the circle of dancers. And then, Caleb was gone, swallowed by the swirling masquerade. We ran after him, calling his name, but every time we pushed into the crowd, it shifted. The dancers moved like a tide, separating us, guiding us back to the edge. Their clothes brushed against my arms, and I swear I felt no flesh beneath, just cold fabric and air. "Caleb!" I shouted again. The music swelled. The violin was joined by a harpsichord, then voices. Low, humming, chanting words I couldn't understand. It wasn't English. It wasn't anything I'd ever heard. And then I saw Caleb again. He was dancing, mask over his face. A mask that hadn't been there before. "Caleb," I whispered. His movements were stiff, unnatural, as if his body were being controlled. He turned his head toward me, and his eyes, wide and terrified, stared through the slits of the mask. His mouth opened to scream, but the music drowned it out. Jess grabbed my hand. "We're leaving. Now!" We pulled Mia, who was shaking so badly she could barely stand. The dancers didn't follow. Not at first, but as we stumbled toward the gate, the music grew louder, sharper, like claws scraping glass. The figures turned their masked faces toward us in unison. Then they came, not running, floating. Dozens of them, gowns trailing like mist, masks grinning, hollow eyes gleaming. We sprinted. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but adrenaline kept me moving. We reached the gate, scrambled up the iron bars, and dropped onto the sidewalk outside. Silence. The music was gone. The glow had vanished. The cemetery lay still and dark, like it had always been. But Caleb wasn't with us. We called for him, screamed his name into the night, but there was nothing, no answer, no trace. Eventually, we had to leave. What else could we do? The next morning, his parents reported him missing. Police searched the cemetery, found nothing. No footprints, no signs of a gathering. They looked at us like we were lying, covering for some drunken mistake. But I know what I saw. I still hear the music at night sometimes. Faint violin notes drifting through my window. And when I dream, I see them. The dancers in their masks, circling endlessly among the tombstones. And Caleb, his eyes begging for help from behind the mask that won't come off. Because once the dead invite you to their party, you don't get to leave, not ever.